Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today is June 2nd, and there are some very important, one could even say historic events with large-scale implications that have occurred on Sunday, June 1. As you probably all know from the world media, is that Ukraine has launched a successful attack on Russian airfields, and also there was a bridge that was blown up and a train wreck, and the bridge collapsed on the train, and these were two simultaneous actions. Now, first about the first one, what is known is that this is absolutely a spectacular new way of conducting military operations. Essentially, what happened is that there were trucks pre-positioned in advance with innocent-looking construction-type fourgon, a kind of rail car or a container that didn't look in any way suspicious. And then at a certain moment, the roof automatically opens and the drone flies out and it hits a nearby airfield. And as a result, about 40 military aircraft, some of them strategic bombers of Russian aviation, in various bases, some of them as far away as Irkutsk area, which is in the Far East, thousands of kilometers from Europe, and in Murmansk, which is a strategic port in the North Atlantic, and in the center of Russia, in Ivanovo, everywhere. These airports were damaged. Now, obviously, the message is we can reach anywhere, we can blow up anything, and there's no defense. And this is, of course, a slap in the face of Russian intelligence services and a slap in the face of Russian air defense system that the Russians are so proud of. This is a very serious slap in the face of Putin's government or Russian government. Now, what also makes it quite painful to the Russians is the bridge that collapsed and exploded exactly the right time when the train was passing by, causing more casualties. There were 7 people killed, and of those 2 children. Just the Russian media also mentions that the 1st of June is the Children's Day, so the death of 2 children on that particular day is particularly painful. So, obviously, from a purely military point of view, this is a spectacularly successful operation. For a few hours, there was a question as to who's done it. And then obviously, the Russians pointed the finger to Ukraine, and immediately Zelensky came out with a public statement proudly announcing that this was a special operation that the Ukrainian services were preparing for over a year, and that he, Zelensky, personally was in command. And he obviously looked very smug and very proud of himself that was done on the eve of negotiations in Istanbul. So the question, of course, is why on the eve? What is the purpose? And there were several interpretations in the various channels that I can only repeat and agree with, that the most important message is to the Ukrainian people, which is that we are strong, we can fight the Russians, we can reach them anywhere, we're not losing the war, and essentially it's for a domestic consumption to strengthen the fighting spirit of Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian populace at large, in that the Ukrainians are ready to fight and can still fight successfully. Now, the second message is obviously to Putin, that we're not afraid of you, that we can continue the fight, and even if you're winning, we can inflict major damage to Russia, to you. Now, the third message, of course, is to the Ukrainian allies in Western Europe and to the types like Senator Graham that indeed Ukraine is not lost yet, that it can inflict severe damage on Russia, and that's exactly what Graham wants. He doesn't really care that much, as he admitted, about the fate of Ukraine. He's into inflicting as much damage on the Russians as possible, and that's exactly what this operation is all about. So from this point of view, it makes perfect sense, in a sense that to coming to the negotiations, Ukraine is supposedly, in their own view, is coming from a stronger position. Now, I would argue that this is not the case, but let's go step by step in analyzing what happened. So, the Zelensky thinking is that the position is stronger, and now they can reach, perhaps force Putin to come to a compromise. The logic goes that if you don't accept our conditions, then we will strike again, and it would be harder for you and more pain. Now let's go to the Russian reaction. How did the Russian reaction? Now, the reactions I will split into two parts: the official reaction and the public reaction. Now, the official reaction is subdued, and this is typical of Putin's responses to cases like this. This has been done when the cruiser Moskva was destroyed, which is a huge loss to the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. So subdued. With delay of several hours, the Ministry of Defense said that there were few aircraft damaged, and in some of the places they were not damaged at all, and that they were contained, and there were fire that was ignited. There was no all the details that we now know about the trucks, pre-positioning, came out through channels, private channels on Telegraph channel and so on. So it was slow, it was subdued, and moreover, the official Russian media tried to portray that it's no big deal. I mean, there were terrorist acts before, there were drones before. They downplayed the significance of this event. And of course, the negotiations are going to continue. Russian delegation went, the Ukrainian delegation went, and as of the time of recording, the meeting is on. It is taking place in Istanbul. So that plan of Zelensky to cancel, to get the Russians so upset that they cancel the meeting, did not take place. Now, what's interesting is that the public reaction in Russian media channels is quite different and new in many, many different ways. Now, there were those channels that are what one would call critical of the Kremlin, that were discussing in great detail all the circumstances of the successful Ukrainian operation. You could see that this dissident or opposition channels, sympathetic to the Western point of view, made an effort to show what a failure of Russian security services this strike was. But on the other hand, if you look at the patriotic channels, or those that are daily broadcasting in terms of their support for the special military operations, what I noticed is a new element in it. Never before have there been discussion of direct strike on Kiev. Never before has there been by serious people, by analysts, by former intelligence officers, to actually strike London, if indeed proof of the British intelligence services was found. So the reaction of the Russian media is anything but subdued, and the speeches that I hear, and both from the Duma Committee on Defense, is that the Russian position in negotiation should harden. It is no longer enough to demilitarize Ukraine. It's not only enough to have restrictions on armed forces. No, now they are demanding complete surrender, capitulation. And the argument goes, there's nothing to discuss with this regime. There's nothing at all. The only way Russia can assure its security is by regime change in Kiev. And so if that is what the result of this strike is, this is certainly not something that helps Zelensky to survive. Now, if we look specifically at the two memorandums that both delegations came to Istanbul, and the details of the Russian memorandum are still not known, and they deliberately decided to reveal those at the negotiations, and they're not known yet. But if we look at the preliminaries and at the Ukrainian memorandum, there are two things that are apparent. Number one, both the Ukrainian and the Russian memorandum contain issues that are what I call reasonable. That is to say, they're theoretically acceptable by both sides. And then there are both memorandum that would have issues that are totally and completely unacceptable to the other side. So if we look at the Ukrainian memorandum, which was delivered to the Americans a couple of days before the meeting, the reasonable items in it are to release Ukrainian children from the Russian captivity, as they say it, to have a prisoner of exchange, all on all, to have a ceasefire, what the Ukrainians like to call unconditional ceasefire, and to have a direct meeting of the two presidents, which seem to be not insurmountable from the Russian point of view. But then there are those items that are totally and completely unacceptable to the Russians. These are no limitations on Ukrainian armed forces, no occupation of Ukrainian territory, no recognition of what they call temporarily occupied Ukrainian territory, NATO guarantees for Ukrainian defense, and the installation of foreign so-called peacekeepers in Ukraine. Now, all of these, as we discussed many, many times, are totally and completely unacceptable to Russia. Now, if we look at the Russian memorandum, and I say the exact long text is not known, but there are significant items in it that have been already revealed by Peskov, Lavrov, and others. The reasonable ones are that the Ukraine should stop any prohibitions and limitations on the use and practice and learning and teaching of the Russian language, as there are millions and millions of Ukrainian citizens of Russian nationality or Russian descent who speak Russian as their first language, and many of them don't speak any other language, especially a version of Ukrainian from Western Ukraine. So this seems to be hard to object to. This is a human right which is practiced in most countries of Europe, and of course a very, very liberal policy on language use in the United States. Second is to stop any persecution of Russian Orthodox Church, which is a part of the Moscow Patriarch Church, which is now in Ukraine is banned, and there are millions and millions of Orthodox believers loyal to the Patriarch of Moscow rather than that of Constantinople, and these people have to have something what is called in the so-called Western values is freedom of religion and freedom of association, and none of that is legal by international law and international standards, that is to say, freedom to exercise religious rights. So that seems to be reasonable too. Another one is to ban Azov detachment, and the reason that seems to be reasonable is because it was banned by the United States Congress. So neo-Nazi groups, if they were banned by US Congress, well, it's certainly something reasonable for the Russian side to demand in negotiations. What, of course, is totally unacceptable to the Ukrainian side in the Russian list is demilitarization, that is severe cuts or imposition of severe limitations on the size of Ukrainian armed forces. That's number two. Number two is no presence of no foreign troops in Ukraine under any disguise, under any conditions whatsoever. And of course the territorial question. And what I have mentioned before, there are louder and louder voices in Russia on the official level that the 4 provinces is not enough. The first step was Putin, who said that it would be a zone of security for Russia, and there are others who now openly say that Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnepropetrovsk or Dnipro, and Kharkov provinces, which is 4 provinces, in addition to the 4 that Russia demanded up to now, that these also have to be a part of the Russian Federation. Historically, these are Russian-speaking areas. Historically, they were known under the name Novorossiya, New Russia. They did not belong to Ukraine before Lenin and Stalin gave those territories to Ukraine. These are simply historical facts. But that's where the positions are. Now, obviously, the conclusion is these positions are irreconcilable. And how it will play out, we will see very shortly. Thank you very much. Please put a like if you do, and please subscribe for new edition of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Bye.